we finally reached the topic, which is the holy grail of all other topics, which is lighting. If you can get down lighting or understand how lighting works, you will basically be able to paint about almost anything you want. Because lighting is so much more than just here's the shadow, here's the light. Lighting is character, lighting is story, lighting is atmosphere, lighting is realism, and being able to create accurate or somewhat believable lighting is so important in order to sell the whole experience for your viewer. And so today, I decided let's talk about some of the common lighting sources that you'll want under your little arsenal tool belt, because being able to paint the top 4 and the bottom 4, because what is top bottom? Anyway, being able to paint these 8 setups will allow you to basically paint the most impactful and most like simple, you can say, kind of illustration to start with. And once you get these down, you're able to then riff on them and expand to say more complex lighting sources where maybe it's like a neon light sign where the lights are kind of in weird shapes, or maybe it's even underwater light where then the water refracts all around and it gets super complicated. Or even say you have a glass of water or whatnot and it's shining through, there's sun shining through and it's landing on a face, in which case, God, there's so much light refraction everywhere and it's going to take some time to understand it, right? So let's go over the top 4 first. So I would say the first very important one to be able to do is top down. It's your super basic, because this is the one where you're going to get your cast shadows pointing all down. You're going to get your cast shadow pointing perfectly underneath the nose, so it's going to shape up that nose really nicely. It's going to create this really beautiful silhouette on top of the nose, like a triangle almost, right here. And top-down lighting, because it's coming from the top, it means that all planes that are facing upwards, meaning the cheeks, the nose, even the top of the lip is going to get some of that lighting. And so compared to the nose, obviously the cheek is going to get a more gradual kind of lighting source, whereas the nose is sticking kind of straight out, and so it's going to catch that really bright, really concentrated shape. And then obviously you're going to have your typical triangle neck shadow, right? The one where anime, manga, you're going to see it's lit like that. And then the hair is going to get a really sharp highlighty spot on top, and it's going to look almost white, especially if it's super, super close to the light source. Now for side lighting sources, these can help convey a sense of sunset or like sleepiness or casualness, especially if you want to help create a little more structure or a little more interest in a character's face and you don't just want like a boring standard kind of lighting source, then you would go for side, because then you can play around with the silhouette of the nose casting onto the face, because it'll help create these beautiful triangles on the cheek, or even silhouettes around the lips and everything and the neck. And in this case, I decided to light Leah from the right side where her bangs are covering her face, because that's going to be somewhat interesting to see how her bangs are kind of going to create these silhouettes, right? And you see that her bang created this like really sharp dark shadow here, whereas everything else is sort of in the lighter areas. And then you have a little bounce light coming from, say, from here, because the light is all around her. But you get this super interesting kind of side cast shadow for her neck, which can help break up that shape of her neck and bring some of the compositional techniques that we've seen, like do some diagonals and help connect the piece a little bit better, right? For backlit, this is a very dramatic type of lighting. It's typically reserved for if you want to create a very seductive, very moody, very gloomy kind of illustration. Say like if you can imagine like lightning is striking down from outside and your character is lit up by that lightning and they're in full-on shadow or something like that, right? Or say in a case where it's sunset or dusk and your character, you want to focus on like the background, then your character is obviously going to be in shadow and create that atmosphere, right? it's going to become more of an environment piece where the character is supporting the environment rather than it being all about the character. And you're going to see that when it's backlit, you're going to get a lot of these bursts of glow. So end up the light is going to radiate over the skin rather than having like really clear cut shadows, clear cut little light sources. And instead you're going to get like hints of that light shining through. And so when you're doing backlit kind of things, the important thing is to be subtle with the lighting and like very gradual types of lighting. So you don't want like too crazy of value spikes, especially if like your light source is like sort of farther away rather than like closer, right? And so I added these little doodads for Leah, these hair slips right here, because I did think that her hair before was a little bit boring. So I just wanted to spice things up for this particular lesson. Though I'm pretty sure that wouldn't work out in real life because I can't imagine anyone would want to leave just one really long strand of hair, right? And finally, another type of lighting situation that might be helpful is bottom up. And this kind of light source creates really, really interesting shadows, but it also gives the implication of a more spooky kind of mood, right? Because when I think of bottom up lighting, I'm thinking of someone sitting in a campfire with a flashlight underneath their chin and they're telling a ghost story. And with the light shining from bottom up, it's lighting up your features in a way that you're not typically used to, which is hence why it seems scary. And the important part for bottom up lighting is that it's a gradation of darker to light first. You're going to catch the light on the underside of your nose instead of the top side. Especially if your eyes are more sunken in, the brow bone is going to catch that light. Your bottom lip is going to catch that light. Your upper lip's going to catch that light, especially if it's poking out a little bit more than usual. Bottom of your ear obviously is going to catch some of that light too, right? And this lighting source isn't just limited to say like campfire or flashlights kind of things. You can maybe do it for situations where a phone lights up underneath someone's face. You're holding up and it's lighting the face from underneath. Holding a lantern or something and it's lighting from underneath. Regardless, the way I like to simplify it rather than like stress all the different wrinkles that gets lit up once you're lighting from underneath, I like to just keep it simple, do a nice gradation of darker to light here, and then push out some of the individual features that are gonna definitely have a very strong shadow, right? Especially your nose is definitely gonna be in darker shadow because it's sticking out more. Her eyelids are gonna be sunken in, so it's not gonna catch much of that light. Bottom lip is also not gonna catch most of that light because it is facing away from it, right? So now let's move on to some color because we just talked about color in the last video and we're going to do different types of settings, right? So let's start with sunset. Let me merge these ones. Sunset. And sunset, I imagine, has this really nice golden vibe, but we're going to keep it somewhat in like this area so we don't go too crazy with the saturation just yet. I imagine with sunset it's going to be a little bit darker, right? So I'm gonna push the shadows towards the red-orange kind of vibe. We're gonna put in her hair. Let's think, what do we want her hair as? Let's do this nice cooler brown to kind of counteract some of that warmth that we have here. Obviously, I'll probably change this color later on as I develop this character a little bit more. But for the sake right now, I'm just going to do a relatively simple color that won't make it too difficult for me to quickly render this. Just pretend that I'm painting very neatly right now. Usually when I paint much slower, but for the sake of our lesson today, our focus is just to give you the general impression of like how would you choose color palettes for these types of lighting settings, right? And so you see here that I am covering the shadows with this nice warm brownish, red-brown kind of color. And then we're gonna give ourselves a nice shadow by taking this color and just saturating it a little bit. Add our blush real quick right now. To add blush on this side, we're just going to take the shadow side, push it to the redder, and then saturate that color. We're going to deepen some of that shadows with a nice chocolatey chestnut brown. And we're going to take our lasso and we're going to draw out that edge so we don't get it too soft and muddly where we don't want it. Shadow here, but then the thing about lighting is with these types of lighting, you're going to end up with this saturated sort of lighter kind of reddish orangey glow around the shadow area. So we're gonna get that in there because that's where the light is hitting the blood vessels under your skin, so it's creating this kind of rim glow, especially here, right? You know I'm going to change my mind a couple of times about this hair color because I don't have the full character design right now. So the hair color I'm basing off of the value I chose previously, and so I know it's a darker value. But whether or not I want it a brown or do I want it a muddy yellow, or do I want it a not so normal color like blue or purple, right? That will come down to when you're actually building the character design. We're gonna balance all this warmth out by cooling our bounce light. Right here, slightly cooled it down. And again, I decided to change the way my shadow is looking. Because I wanted a little bit more of that sort of light kind of stipulation on her face a little bit more. I've decided to make her hair darker slightly so it'll balance out with this sort of brownish shade that we've chosen. I'm going to go a little more ham into like the orangey vibe since the sun's going to set this really goldeny color. We just want to exaggerate it. Now to mix between, we're just going to go slightly more orange as the in-between color because yellow and red makes... Yep, you got it, orange. Again, we're gonna cool her hair color because I have made the decision to balance out her overall design. And in this case, that means the hair that's in the light source is going to be warmer versus the hair that's in the cooler area is going to be cooler, right? The hair on this side is going to lean more towards that orange. Remember to squint your eyes every once in a while. Make sure you're getting your values correct. Get ourselves that blush in there real quick before it's too late. Right here, we're gonna assume that the nose is gonna get this reddish, sort of super saturated neon kind of color. And before we forget it, we're gonna add in her lips. Just get all her features down, basically. We want it closer to like the reddish peach. Remember again, if it's like this super bright environment, this eyelid crease just gets that kind of red rim instead of like your usual darker value shadow. Her eyeballs real quick. Again, this is not going to be a full render because I'm trying to get as much information as I can through this video. give her green eyes for now or something. I don't know. And then we'll finish off the piece by using our Beautiful Overlay tool and throwing some of that golden light onto just like this edge to really sell the whole idea that it is. I also put her in like, say, a suitable environment, right? We'll just give her like a little sunset scene. And the blue will complement that orange that we set her skin very well. And then we're gonna add some of the oranges here and there to sell the vibe that this is indeed a sunset. I don't know, something like that, I guess. Sunset. That's the overall color scheme I would do for like a sunset. Whereas for a cloudy day, her skin's gonna be using a lot more muted colors, right? So I'm not going to be using that same yellow orange instead. This time I'm using a much more muted kind of color, this kind of peach color, almost grayish. I'm gonna put in the background just because I definitely feel like I work better when I have a little background. Pretend these are clouds. Yeah, something like that. Just throw in that cloud in there for now. So we're gonna gray out the skin even more because this whole environment is relatively cool lighting, so you're not gonna have that warm kind of color. Then since it's also cloudy, that means your shadows aren't going to be very strong. It's still gonna run slightly cool. right? You're not gonna have a bright sky, so your figure's not gonna be super brightly lit. And so I'm just gonna do a very soft, basic kind of shadow. Just add just a tad of warmth that comes from the natural skin, but not too much. And since your light source is cool, that means your shadow is going to run slightly warmer, though it's not going to be super, super crazy warm. Right, and so that's a general kind of light scheme I would do for like a cloudy day. Now, if I were to do it under a tree, real quick, we can do this. Let me put down. For under a tree, again, supposedly, I'm also gonna lay down a background color so I'm not flying blind here. Real rough right here. Again, we're gonna choose something more yellow orange for that. Alright, at this point I'm gonna be super messy, but I'll clean these up after I finish this lesson, and in the PDF you'll get to see them in their full glory, right? Because essentially what I would be doing is, if I took my time with these, I would be doing like a full-on portrait, which typically takes me about an hour or so, and each class I don't want to bore you by watching me paint for like an hour or so. So put that down there. Or push it slightly red and darker. All right, and then we're gonna come in with our really bright sunlight. So we're gonna take our hard light. I'm gonna start creating little steeples of light as though it's coming through the trees. And the key to doing this is to make sure you're not having too many in like one area. Again, think big shapes. And right around those edges, we gotta make sure we capture that rim glow that you usually see with sunlight. Just ever so slightly. Try not to go too overboard with it. And the key here is saturation. And then finally, we're gonna do one that's just plain old sunny day. Be able to communicate like how to create a really bright daylight versus like a cloudy day, right? So final one, put in our background. So real bright. And the sky tends to cool down and darken as it gets higher to the top because you are getting closer to like the edge of the atmosphere, right? We're just gonna throw some really pretty, like, huge clouds or something, I don't know. Just to help fill up that space just a little bit. Put in like a happy green grass or something. It's looking like a Windows Savers. Regardless, right here the sun is gonna shine. It's powerful magic, so you're gonna get that real bright glow here. We're gonna also add a tint of purple to those clouds so they look real nice, right? Look at how pretty that purple looks. And so now on to the person. If it's gonna be this bright, you better believe she's way too exposed. Her base color is going to be power to the max, right? But maybe we'll tone it down just a bit so you have an opportunity to get those really nice highlights. Also gonna warm up her skin just a tad bit, just like that. Okay, that's the base color. Put in her hair. We basically opted to make her hair whatever we feel like at the moment. At the moment, I guess I'm feeling honey brown or whatnot. I don't know. Important thing is when I get that shadow in there. Set the mood by deciding where our light source is. It's gonna be right here. you're gonna have that warmth back right here. So I just laid down like a lot of the cooler shadows, and you can see like because this sky is like a cool sky, it's gonna cause like the base color of the skin to appear cooler. And then it's when you have like the sun kind of bouncing around, then it's gonna start to warm up a bit. Right? This bounce light that's coming from back here. And what I usually do at the very end is like I go over everything with like a glow, almost as though like the light is actually bouncing around, right? And I even do a cover with like an overlay. And so those are like the four main types of color palettes or lighting scenarios you should probably familiarize yourselves with. I just have a couple more things to say about lighting, and it's how you should limit the amount of light that you're putting into your illustration. I don't mean to say like, oh, don't put any source of lighting source at all, but you can see how like just having maybe one little area or a couple little areas like super bright in light can help put together, like combine the piece all together. And so The fear of using too much light is that your eyes get too distracted and you don't have a good like overall silhouette. And so it's better to always do something like it's the contrast between a type of illustration where maybe a lot of things are dark. And then you just have this one bright light source. Right? Maybe just a couple of here and there. Right? But overall, your eyes are focused here versus, say, an illustration where you've made the mistake of lighting up too much of the environment or too much of every other character. Right, you placed a window here, you did this. Placed a lamp here or something. Right, the contrast between having the focus or visual intrigue of a light source like this versus a light source like this. Or like even for shadows, like if you are too committed to giving more light to your characters, say like this, like the generic basic lighting source like this, just got your basic cast shadow, versus say a more interestingly lit. Right, you can see how this type of silhouette might look more interesting than this silhouette because you have all these interesting negative space created by like the way the light works on the face. And so when it comes to lighting, it's difficult to understand for sure. And because lighting bounces everywhere. And so when you're trying to consider like, oh, is this going to catch some of this light? Is this going to have a reflection of that light? Or how does this lighting affect this base color of an object? The best way to learn how to do lighting is to always observe your environment, take pictures, practice from photos, just try to expose yourself to as many different types of situations. And then as you learn from these like mistakes and like frustrations, you're gonna get a better grasp of like, okay, this works, right? Or this pulls off a little bit better. Like even I, as you can see through the time lapses, saw me like going over a different color because it just didn't look right. And that comes from like me trying to work it out, right? Trying to capture that lighting mood. So for the homework, I'm gonna have you guys pick like a couple of pictures of skies with really interesting color palettes. If it has people or animals, that'd be even better, so you can understand how like those lightings will affect the person themselves. But if you can't, I want you to challenge yourself a little bit and see if you can imitate that type of lighting with the person, right? Which might be hard, but there's like a lot of photo references out there, so I'm sure it'll be really easy. I will be providing like a few pictures of some skies that I've taken before. Maybe you might be interested in using those as your classic exercise, but regardless, I will compile this into a PDF and I will see you in the next lesson where we talk a bit about character design and I can finally figure out what hair color I want Leah to have. Bye!